Buzz, when I was a girl, our house was robbed,
Yes.
and I was terrified to set foot in the house. And this wasn't any kind of a violent crime. It was just a home robbery.
Sure.
Some things were taken from our house. I was scared to death to walk into the house.
Yes.
If Nora came in and her mother was brutally murdered by someone, who knows if the murderer is lurking somewhere in the house, hiding in a closet? Wouldn't most people be afraid to go into that house?
Absolutely, and that witness that was taking the stand was acting appropriately. We heard it. He ran out of the house in his boxers, and he had his gun, and he was very concerned and very upset, and he noticed that she just ran on ahead of him, which seemed to skew his perception of how people would act in these very dramatic, high-octane situations. We usually try to go with how people would normally act in situations that aren't normal, and again, the defendant doesn't seem to be acting appropriately. She doesn't seem to be acting in a way that we feel comfortable with, and unfortunately, it starts to add up.
So is there an explanation, Dr. Buzz, that's consistent with innocence as to why she would just walk into the house without any fear?
First of all, she's worried about her mother, even though she had these ongoing conflicts with her mother, even though her perception may be skewed by the over amount of drug use that she had had. She's still concerned about her mother, and then she went for help, and then she ran in. She wasn't completely ruled by fears. Her first and foremost concern was to save her mother.
Okay.
That's as good as I can get, Lisa.
Well, that's pretty good. That's pretty good,
All right.
Dr. Buzz. We also talked about the outfit that the defendant is wearing. I criticize it as being a little too lawyerly and makes her look older, and you want to make her look younger. And our producer has let us know that the defense attorney actually bought her this matronly outfit, which I think is all wrong. I mean, what are they thinking?
Right. She is a child. She is a teenager. She should be dressed as a teenager. She should be accentuating her youth.
Yes.
I also need to point out that following the robbery or the murder by the defendant, either which way you want to go, there was water in the shower, so she could have showered herself off, and one of the witnesses report that she smelled very clean when they met her the next day, and we would think that a teenager who's been out partying the whole night, who may have been smoking marijuana, taking cocaine, and using prescription medication, and possibly engaging in romantic relationships, would not smell so great the next day.
Well, you know, yes, but teenage girls do shower. They do bathe a little bit better than teenage boys. So I don't know if we can criticize her
All
for
right.
that.
You got me there.
My mom because my mom is bleeding. Is she breathing? No, she's not breathing. She's not breathing. She's not breathing.
Sounds pretty genuine to me. Dr. Buzz, she's hysterical. She's distraught. Does that sound real to you?
Sounds real to me, and of course we're all looking at this in hindsight. We know about, unfortunately, the defendant's history. We know that she is in grief, that her father died approximately 15 months ago. We know that she has a history of drug and alcohol abuse. We know that she had ongoing conflict with her mother, and she wasn't connected to the school, and she didn't have long-term choices. She wanted that money, and she viewed her mother as her oppressor, not as her loving parent.
Yeah.
When we listen to this, though, I'm swept away. I'm listening to it, but of course, all the jury also is watching the defendant, and she doesn't seem to be emoting any emotion.
Yeah.
She's very stoic, and unfortunately, we shouldn't hold that against her. Grief is highly individual, and how people look at grief and react to
Well, it's a
grief
good point.
is personal.
And we hear her on the 911 tape so distraught, and you're right,
Yes.
sitting there in court so very calm. And now let's take a look at some similar cases where young people have been accused of killing their own parents. In 2006, Cody Posey was only 14 years old when he shot and killed his father, stepmother, and stepsister, and then buried their bodies in the yard. Soon after the victims were discovered, the teen admitted to the shootings, but claimed he snapped after suffering years of physical and emotional abuse. Here, though, Dr. Buzz, there ain't no history of abuse. The worst abuse you could say was that mom didn't want to give the daughter the money that the dad left for her. I think everybody would stand behind mom on that. She wanted the girl to go to college to secure the money for her future. She didn't want to give it to her up front because she was sure that she was going to blow it on drugs and alcohol.
Right, you're dealing with an adolescent, of course, who wants to have her freedom, and she views her mother as her oppressor. She did have choices. She didn't want those choices. She didn't have a good connection to the school. for whatever reason. There was no school bonding, and she wanted to go out and have parties with her friends. She did have a history of drug and alcohol abuse. The mother obviously had diminished parenting skills. The mother was probably going through grief from her own husband's death, and she also had another divorce, and she had also just ended a romantic relationship. So these were people that needed help, clearly, but they weren't getting it. And when they were working together, they weren't seeing reasonable solutions. They had limited coping skills. Unfortunately, everybody does have choices. They just don't see them sometimes.
And this one, Dr. Buzz, is a knifing death. I mean, any kind of murder is horrific, but with a gun, it's a lot less personal. You might take one shot in a moment of anger. This was a knifing death, and the mother was stabbed 50 times. If the daughter did it, she had to be carrying around a huge amount of rage.
A tremendous amount of emotional rage. And it's my understanding that it wasn't just one knife, it was two knives going at it, kind of like a machine gun. She truly viewed her mother as her oppressor, and she wanted escape. And the only escape she saw, the only choice she saw, the only way for her freedom was to murder her own mother, who she viewed as her oppressor. It's incredibly heartbreaking.
It certainly is.
Or were you questioning her about where she'd been or what she'd been up to or any of that?
No. I was strictly trying to console her.
All right, I'm going to take this neighbor's testimony at face value. I don't see what reason she would have to lie. Dr. Buzz, Rachel, or rather this defendant, is crying, hysterical, but no tears coming out of her eyes. What do you make of that?
Very damaging testimony for the defense. It sounds like there's a lot of dramatic gesturing, a lot of acting to show I am upset, look at me, I'm under a lot of stress. My mother was just murdered, my father was just killed 12 months ago, 15 months ago, help me. But it doesn't seem to be genuine. It doesn't seem to be credible, and that's extremely damaging to the defense. We also have a defendant who doesn't seem to show very much emotion. She doesn't seem to be very sympathetic. So all in all, it's basically telling the jury members what she was doing was acting, and it's dramatic and it's gesturing, but it's not real. It's not credible.
Yeah, right. On the other hand, she could have just been in such shock that she reacted strangely, although it is hard to imagine crying without tears coming out. And that's something our viewers tend to notice, by the way, in the courtroom. They tend to notice when somebody appears to be crying, but they don't see any tears coming out. I can't tell you how many emails I've had about that over the years. Thanks to our guests.